So let's solve this error with the getStaticPaths function. For this, in our PID.js file, I simply export another function, another async function called getStaticPaths. And just like getStaticProps, you must make sure that you have no typo in there, because Next.js will look for this function specifically. Now, the goal of this function is to tell Next.js which instances of this dynamic page should be generated. Therefore, this should return an object, just as getStaticProps does, but an object with different kinds of values. An object where you have a paths key. And that's now an array full of objects. So that is a given structure which you must return here. Now in this object, you must add a params key now, and that holds another object where you have a bunch of key value pairs, where the keys are all the different dynamic segment identifiers that might lead to this page. If that would be nested deeper in a folder where the folder name is also dynamic, you could have multiple identifiers. Here it's only one, so PID. And the values are then the concrete values for which this page should be generated. So here, for example, we know that we want to generate this page 3 times for P1, P2, and P3 as values for this dynamic page identifier here. And therefore, I'll set PID here to P1. And then I will repeat that. So now we just create another object where params is set to another object with PID P2. And we now repeat this a third time here. So another object where params is then set to P3, like this. Now this tells Next.js that this dynamic page here should be pre-generated 3 times with these 3 values as a value for this dynamic segment identifier. And then Next.js will call getStaticProps 3 times for these different IDs, and we then can extract that ID like this inside of this function. Now for this to work, we also need to add another key next to paths, and that's the fallback key, which for the moment should be set to false. I'll come back to that later. For the moment, set it to false, and then if you save everything, you will see that if you load localhost 3000/P2, for example, you have the product2 page. If I go back to the starting page and I click on product3, I have product3 data here. And now that is displayed correctly and successfully because it was pre-generated successfully by Next.js. And therefore, getStaticPaths is required to tell Next.js which concrete instances of this dynamic page must be pre-generated.